Good morning, dear friends. Happy New Year. Woo! 2025. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. I am Gina Talento, and I am so happy to serve as one of our worship associates today, along with Wendy Engelhardt and our service leader, Mike Hoffman, on our first Sunday morning of 2025. A very special welcome to any of you who are visiting us for the first time today. We're delighted that you are here, and we are looking forward to getting to know you. Please plan to stay following the service and join us for a coffee hour. Feel free to speak to one of our friendly folks who are happy to answer any questions you may have about us here at the Fellowship. If you are viewing the service online, please sign out and go to our website for a link to our small group chats to meet others in a smaller setting where you can get to know some of us better. Our Director of Religious Education is Deb Little. Our musicians are Peg Espinola, Linda Cortese, and Rich Hall. Our tech team is Rob Pond and Linda and Rich, and our hymnist is Bethany Riddle. Finally, today is Super Sunday, and our menu is fully plant-based. Thank you to Judd Kramarczyk for that.
Today we're trying something new. I know, if you don't like change, it's okay. Take a deep breath. Instead of the usual lighting of candles for joys and sorrows, today we will drop pebbles into the water. At any time during the service, please feel free to come forward and place a pebble in the water. A kind word or a thoughtful act, like a pebble dropped in the water, sends ripples out into the world. Should you wish to make a promise or let one go, remember someone, release a bit of pain, or otherwise mark some important event or occasion, please step to the table and quietly send your thoughts outward as you drop a pebble into the water, mingling the ripples of your intention with the ripples of those of other people in our community. We enter into the sacred space of worship with the sounding of the bell. Please remain silent until the sound can no longer be heard.
We have asked Judd Kramarczyk to light our chalice this morning while I read a poem by Kim Mason titled A Holy Alchemy. Once upon a time, chemists believed they could transform lead into gold or death into life. We laugh. But are we not also in the business of alchemy, turning loneliness into connection, pain into comfort, anger into solidarity, faith into action? The subtle magic of church combines love with justice, creates hope out of fear, transforms individuals into community. Here we engage in holy alchemy, finding beauty in the ordinary and life in the present. Come, let us be transformed together. For our opening words, Judd will read a poem by Bronislaw Maj that was translated from the Polish by Czesław Milaz and Robert Haas. It is from a book of luminous things entitled A Leaf.
A leaf, one of the last, parts from a maple branch. It is spinning in the transparent air of October, falls on a heap of others, stops, fades. No one admired its entrancing struggle with the wind, followed its flight, No one will distinguish it now as it lies among the other leaves. No one saw what I did. I am the only one.
Hello? Okay. My first song, called Close Encounter of a Weird Kind, I wrote it in 2011 in April. It was the first time that turkeys found my home and my bird feeder, and wild turkeys, and it was extraordinary, so the whole experience, so I wrote a song. It's a very Unitarian song, by the way. As you'll see. I made myself some breakfast, 2 eggs and buttered toast, then coffee from Sumatra, that's the part I love the most. I sat down by the sliding doors to catch the rising sun. Oh, the pleasures of the morning, they had just begun. Yes, the pleasures of the morning, they had just begun. The sky was pink and cloudless, with scarcely any breeze. Some little squirrels played hide and seek among the distant trees, when suddenly, like an arrow, there came hurtling down the hill a parade of giant turkeys with their calls so shrill. A parade of giant turkeys with their calls so shrill. I marveled at the gobblers, iridescent black and brown, their wattled necks, their ivory snoots, their beards all dangling down. They milled about the feeders and they scratched the ground for seed, while the chickadees and pigeons fed with all due speed. Yes, the chickadees and pigeons fled with all due speed. Then one young Tom approached the door, his beady eyes met mine. He seemed to want to enter and upon my toast to dine. He pecked the glass and glared at me with incredulity. Then he went upon his turkey way and let me be. Yes, he went upon his turkey way and let me be. Now since I am a human, I could make a thing of this. I could call it nature's blessing or a kind of cosmic kiss. But what I know for certain is a turkey met my gaze, and I'll hold on to the memory for all my days. Yes, I'll hold on to the memory for all my days.
Thank you, Peg. So why do people write poetry? What is the purpose? Well, Wendy did a search of that question and came up with a list courtesy of Google's AI bot. It is 2025 after all. So here's the list. The expression of emotion, the exploration of ideas, artistic creativity, connection with others, historical record, I guess as in an ode, and spiritual exploration, which is part of why we're here today. As part of its conclusion, it notes, ultimately, poetry serves as a multifaceted art form that can fulfill emotional, intellectual, and social functions. Not a bad summary. Now, this is the third annual poetry service that I've led, all centered around the new year. I love the sense of tradition we are creating together. I can't think of a better way to start the year. All of the poems you will hear are either written by our own fellowship members or are favorite poems that they submitted. The service may run a bit long in order to accommodate all who wanted to participate. Thanks to all who have contributed. And instead of our usual minute of meditation, we'll allow a short moment of silence, maybe 5-10 seconds, after each poem, to let the words absorb into our consciousness. And we all want to show our appreciation for our poems, readers, and music this morning. Rather than clapping for the poems, we ask that you snap to signify support and to encourage a more focused listening experience during our readings.
Born in 1943, Nikki Giovanni is the author of numerous collections of poetry and was the first recipient of the Rosa Parks Woman of Courage Award. She rose to prominence as a fierce voice for change in the Black arts movement, reading poems and speaking to packed audiences. Unlike many of her Black arts contemporaries, she honed her voice in poems about the comforts of home and domesticity and the particular strengths and joys of being a woman. She insisted that her childhood, spent most memorably in Knoxville, was a happy one, in spite of setbacks. Giovanni was a one-of-a-kind writing talent who tackled everything from racism to love to life and death in her works. An author of more than 25 books, she was a natural-born writer and performer. Often known as the Princess of Black Poetry, she championed the Black Power movement in her poems and paid tribute to legends like Nina Simone and Angela Davis. Nikki Giovanni never stopped writing. When she died on December 9th, last month, she was working on her last book of poetry called The Last Book, which will come out in 2025. I'd like to ask Barbara Coley to read Giovanni's poem. Is she here this morning? Yes, she is. Called The Last, Nikki Rosa. The poem is obviously autobiographical, but the opening lines make it clear that Giovanni is thinking about the experience of being Black in more general, universal terms.
Good morning. Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're Black. You always remember things like living in Woodlawn with no inside toilet. And if you become famous or something, they never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself, and how good the water felt when you got your bath from one of those big tubs that folks in Chicago barbecue in. And somehow, when you talk about home, it never gets across how much you understood their feelings as the whole family attended meetings about Hollydale. And even though you remember your biographers never understand your father's pain as he sells his stock and another dream goes. And though you're poor, it isn't poverty that concerns you. And though they fought a lot, it isn't your father's drinking that makes any difference, but only that everybody is together and you and your sister have happy birthdays and very good Christmases. And I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they never understand Black love is Black wealth. And they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy.
I like
Fran-
My God Plain by Ginger Williams. Plain and raw like a radish, plain like water from a tin cup, cool on a sweet summer day. Plain like white sneakers, the lace-up kind, with no Velcro, no brand names. I like My God plain, no frills, no coupons, no packaging in slick shrink wrap. Plain the way John writes, his name in block print on all his books and legal pads. Plain like the kind of God you can say anything to, like wow, or help, or thanks. And she gets it. I like My God plain, like pita and goat cheese, with a white wine communion. Such a God would drink tea with me on the back porch, praise the doves, admire the budding leaves. She wrote that for Kate. Oops. I just want to say, many of you don't know Ginger, and some of you don't know John, but they were poets and were mentors to UU poets and writers. And this comes from John's book, Skipping Stones, Creating the World. I read somewhere about an early Islamic theologian who said that God created the world anew each instant, continuous, ongoing creation, no 6 days and then rest. In fact, no divine vacation for quite a while. It suggests some different ideas about the nature of God. Being close to godliness would not suggest cleanliness so much as attention to detail. Everything at once, every time, all that stuff going on simultaneously. And the things that almost happen don't, like the kid who sledded across the tracks and went clean under the moving train. Of course, there might be some slips, those stretches of highway or parts of the departmental meeting that I really don't remember. Might be a few uncreated patches, not worldwide, just a local glitch. That beautifully hit backhand that in the next created instant cracks into the net. It restores God's free will, taken away by those natural law thinkers of the Enlightenment with their watchmaker God, left with nothing much to do. Nowadays, theorists of probability say that what goes up probably, most likely, will come down, but there can't be any absolute law about it. Just like that old Muslim doctor said, it depends on what God decides.
Donna Demian will now read an original poem titled The Wind Off the Sea. Donna?
And to make a connection with what? Thank you, Michelle. To make a connection with what Frances was just reading, John and Ginger held a monthly meeting for UU writers, and we would go to their home and share what we had written, or we would write according to a prompt that John or Ginger would provide for us. And while they are both still with us in life, we are unable to see them but those of us who worked, with whom they worked, with the UU writers and other things, know that they met here and married here, and were wonderful mentors for those of us who aspired to write. The wind off the sea. Close your eyes. The present will disappear. Let me surround you with my voice, sway you with my strength, bring you breath from foreign places. I will stay with you forever.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 350, The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time. I'd like to ask Gilda Candela to read her original poem, which is titled Love is Love.
Good morning. So I wrote this poem during COVID. It was late March, it was cold, and it was sunny. And as I looked out the back door, I noticed a cardinal come and land on my table. And I was reminded of my sister who had passed. And these words just came pouring out. Love is love. It doesn't go away. It lingers in the universe undisturbed. It may not be visible or seem present, and especially after someone passes, it may appear to have vanished. But oh no. Think about it. Where could it go? It can't really disappear. Perhaps it moves over a bit to make room for more love that is to come, but it remains in the texture of your countless memories, even the forgotten ones, never to be disentangled from your personal fabric. It's something to be counted on. That's what I'm told. And you know it's true. Whenever you think of her, of him, of them, there is a reason for the thought. They are thinking of you. They are reaching out. I comfort myself and believe that that bird, that butterfly, that rainbow, that scent, that feather, that song, that soft touch on the shoulder, and no one's there. There it is. Love. Love is love. It doesn't go away.
Mary Jane Oliver was an American poet who won the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. She's a favorite of UU's everywhere. Her poetry is characterized by wonderment at the natural environment, vivid imagery, and unadorned language. In 2007, she was declared the best-selling poet in the United States. Clinton Hubbard will now read a Mary Oliver poem titled Wild Geese. Clinton?
On March 19th, 2008, I spoke at a drug and alcohol rehab in New Jersey. The occasion was the 25th anniversary of my sobriety, and I finished my talk with a wonderfully appropriate poem by Mary Oliver, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
Colleen Rudman will now read two poems by William Butler Yeats. The Second Coming and The Lake Isle of Innisfree. Apologies to Colleen because she was left out of the order of service, but is very much here with us.
As Mike said, I've selected two of William Butler Yeats' most famous poems to read today. W.B. Yeats, 1865 to 1939, was an Irish poet, dramatist, and writer, and one of the foremost figures of 20th century literature. He was a driving force behind the Irish literary revival and co-founded the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. He was awarded the 1923 Nobel Prize in Literature. His 1919 poem, The Second Coming, prophesies that some sort of second coming is due. Traditionally, this is the return of Christ to earth, as promised in the New Testament. But the anarchy that has arisen all around the world, a result of the events of the First World War, as well as the tumultuous events in Yeats' home country of Ireland, is to the poet a sign that this second coming cannot be far off. And it doesn't sound like a benevolent Christ figure is on the way. The tone is clearly ominous. The imagery to me is brilliant and chilling. The second coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? On a much lighter note is the lyrical The Lake Isle of Innisfree, which Yeats wrote much earlier in his career in 1888. The Lake Isle of Innisfree is an uninhabited island within Loch Gill in Ireland, near which Yeats spent his summers as a child. Yeats describes the inspiration for the poem coming from a sudden memory of his childhood while walking down Fleet Street in London. The poem expresses the speaker's longing for the peace and tranquility of Innisfree while residing in an urban setting. The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. While I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core.
Please rise as you're willing and able and sing hymn number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door. This is actually a poem by Louis Untermeyer from 1923. Please be seated. Shelley Pissaris will now read a favorite poem she selected, written by Cortland Sayers. It is titled Bankrupt. Shelley?
One midnight, deep and starlit still, I dreamed that I received this bill, an account with life. 5,000 breathless dawns all new, 5,000 flowers fresh in dew, 5,000 sunsets wrapped in gold, 1,000,000 snowflakes served iced cold. 5 quiet friends, 1 baby's love, 1 white mad sea with clouds above. 100 music-haunted dreams of moon-drenched roads and hurrying streams, of prophesying winds and trees, of silent stars and browsing bees. 1 June night in a fragrant wood, 1 heart that loved and understood. I wondered when I waked at day, how in God's name I could pay.
I'd like to ask Susie Burns to read a poem by William Stanley Merwin titled To the New Year. Susie?
Happy New Year. W.S. Merwin was the son of, born in New York City. He was born the son of a Presbyterian minister, and his first writings as a very young person were hymns for his father. He later was a student of Buddhism, and because of that, he got very involved in his love of nature, and he ended up living in Hawaii on what had been a pineapple plantation, which he built back into its original form as a rainforest. So what intertwines in all his poetry is his love of nature. Here he speaks of the quiet coming of the new year. To the new year. With what stillness at last you appear in the valley, your first sunlight reaching down to touch the tips of a few high leaves that do not stir, as though they had not noticed and did not know you at all. Then the voice of a dove calls far away in itself to the lush and the hush of the morning. So this is the sound of you, here and now, whether or not anyone hears it. This is where we have come with our age, our knowledge, such as it is, and our hopes, such as they are, invisible before us and untouched and still possible.
It is our spiritual practice to share our plate with an organization working for a more just future. For the month of January, the social justice recipient is the Brookhaven branch of the NAACP. Their mission is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic quality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination, ensure the health and well-being of all persons. The NAACP's work for the 21st century focuses on economic sustainability, education, health, public safety, criminal justice, voting rights, and political representation, and expanding youth and young adult engagement. They also seek legal redress for incidents of discrimination. As you know, dismantling racism is a key focus for Unitarian Universalism, so please give generously. The board members will now accept our offering.
The offertory, When I Am Old, does demand, it's very short, but it demands a little explanation. Some of you may have heard this before. When I first sang it, I sang it at Grounds and Sounds and elsewhere. I wrote it in 2023. I woke up in the middle of the night and with a song in my head. I've been dreaming, I believe I've been dreaming of my husband. And this strange two verses came to me with all the words except a couple when I recorded it right then with my phone. A couple of them were a little blurred, so I did the best I could to transcribe them later. It didn't make any sense to me because, and it also came with the tune to another song I'd already written. So I got rid of that tune and wrote one that went more with how I felt about this. I also added a third verse to make it make more sense and relevance to me, because the song is called When I Am Old. Well, guess what? I am old. So I interpreted my unconscious gift to myself as meaning when I am really old. Like, I really don't desire much, remember much, but I'm content to rock and sip my tea, as this song states. And I went out in the world and I sang the song with all three verses, the one I had written without the dream and the two that I dreamed. A year later, exactly, in April, which is the month, by the way, I married and we had our birthdays, my husband and I, a Facebook post appeared on my feed from an organization called www.dorothyparker.com. And the post of that day was her poem called Afternoon, which was word for word what my first two verses were. She must have written it when I was in my 20s. I don't recall ever seeing it and certainly not memorizing it. So this is a very weird thing, but I felt very, very depressed for a while because I said, I can't sing this poem, it's not mine, I can't sing this song. But then I said, no, it's a co-write with Dorothy Parker. So I have always sung an a cappella, but with Linda and Rich's encouragement, I put chords to it yesterday. So, when I am old and comforted and done with this desire, with memory to share my bed and peace to share my fire, I'll comb my hair in scalloped bands beneath my laundered cap, and watch my cool and fragile hands lay light upon my lap. And I will have a sprigged gown with lace to kiss my throat. I'll draw my curtain to the town and hum a purring note. And I'll forget the way of tears and rock and stir my tea. But oh, I wish those blessed years were farther than they be. Now there are times I do recall with sudden pang of grief, when we were young and unaware how death might prove a thief. But in my dreams time disappears and love is fresh and new. I'll take the pain that memory brings, because it brings me you.
Thank you, Peg. That is quite an amazing story. So I'd like to ask Lorraine Stidd to now read a verse by the 14th century mystic Hafiz and translated by poet Daniel Ladinsky. Lorraine?
Thank you, Mike. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to the world all of its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light, of love, against its being. Otherwise, one might remain too frightened. The heart, even on its better days, can be just one wing needed to fly. The other wing, love from someone else, or from a beautiful creature, or some synergy with a gorgeous mountain or sky, can cause your spirit to awake, unfurl, give thanks, and know joy.
Carol Castillo submitted this poem by Sahar Rahmani titled Sign. I will read it for her. What aren't you willing to believe? A heart graffitied fuchsia on the street, a missive from another life. Remember the stem of lavender you found in a used copy of Bishop's poems? A verse underlined. The world is a mist, and then the world is minute and vast and clear. Suddenly, across the aisle, a woman with your mother's bracelets, her left wrist all shimmer and gold. You almost winced. Coincidence is the great mystery of the human mind, but so is the transoceanic reach of Sarah Rukh Khan's slow blink. Each of us wants a hint, a song that dares us to look inside. True, it takes whimsy and ego to believe the universe will tap you on the shoulder in the middle of a random afternoon. That t-shirt on a stranger's chest, a bumper sticker on a highway upstate. Truth isn't going anywhere. It's your eyes passing by.
Dylan Thomas was a Welsh poet and writer, and he also wrote stories and radio broadcasts. He became widely popular in his lifetime and remained so after his death at the age of 39 in New York City. By then, he had acquired quite a reputation, which he had encouraged as a, quote, roistering, drunken, and doomed poet. Although Thomas wrote exclusively in the English language, he has been acknowledged as one of the most important Welsh poets of the 20th century. He is noted for his original, rhythmic, and ingenious use of words and imagery. His position as one of the great modern poets has been much discussed, and he remains popular with the public. Jim Calkins will now read his favorite poem by Dylan Thomas entitled, "Do Not Go Gently Into That Night."
Before I start, a couple quick words. Throughout my life, I have chosen different poems, songs for the different stages of my life. And this has been my most recent one. And I came across it last year when injured, and I was homebound, and a physical therapist came in and wanted me to take off my soft cast that was holding my knee straight and lift my leg 2 inches. He came back 2 days later, and I was lifting it 18 inches. He said, "Wow, most people don't do that." I said, "What what do most people do? He says, they lay in bed. No, it's not going to happen, and that's why this poem. And I was sitting there listening, in the back there, listening to the poems, and I thought this also could be not only physical, but spiritual and mental, especially those who are very upset about the events of November. So here we go. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at the close of day. Rage, rage at the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gently into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gently into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my Father, there on that sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 389, Gathered Here. We will sing the first time through together. Then, as this is written as a round, feel free to jump in as the Spirit moves you. Not too shabby. Thank you. I'd like to ask Elise Nichols-Powell to come up to read a poem she selected titled The Cookie Thief by Valerie Cox. Elise?
Good morning. I've got
Valerie Cox, the author of this poem, was born in 1951 in Dublin, Ireland, and has been a newspaper journalist, author, radio and TV reporter, writer, and artist. She's quoted as saying, "I am the nosiest person on the earth." This is her poem, The Cookie Thief. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man sitting beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag in between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. So she munched the cookies and watched the clock as the gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. And when only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other, and she snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she'd been so galled, and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat. Then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned in despair. The others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. How many times has our ego absolutely convinced us that we were right about something, only to find out later that we were wrong? So, as wise people say, mistakes are opportunities for our learning and our growth. We learn from our errors and strive not to repeat the same mistake. We need to love ourselves and learn from our experiences. Take the opportunity for self-love, growth, and clarity.
Our next poem, For a New Beginning, comes from Irish poet, theologian, and philosopher John O'Donohue from his book, To Bless the Space Between Us. This poem came to me, it's my submission, it came to me during a difficult time in my life and spoke to my heart. So let's see if I can get through it. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the great promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be at home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.
For our closing words, I'd like to share another poem by Nikki Giovanni. This one is entitled Quilts. Like a fading piece of cloth, I am a failure. No longer do I cover tables filled with food and laughter. My seams are frayed, my hems falling, my strength no longer able to hold the hot and the cold. I wish for those first days when just woven I could keep water from seeping through repelled stains with the tightness of my weave, dazzled in sunlight with my reflection. I grow old, though pleased with my memories. The tasks I can no longer complete are balanced by the love of the tasks gone past. I offer no apology, only this plea. When I am frayed and strained and drizzle at the end, please, someone cut a square and put me in a quilt that I might keep some child warm, and some old person with no one else to talk to, will hear my whispers and cuddle near.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you who submitted and read poems. It made this day really special. May all our hours together be blessed as this one has been, by open-hearted sharing, learning from one another, and making beautiful harmonies together. And may we greet everyone we encounter with the same acceptance and grateful kinship until we meet again. Blessed be.
The stream sings it to the river sings it to the sea sings it to the boat that carries you and me. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. Now the boat we are sailing on was built by many hands, and the sea we are sailing on, it touches many sands. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, to Navegos and me. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. Oh, the voyage has been long and hard, and yet we're sailing still, with a song to help us pull together, if we only will. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. So with our hopes we raise the sails to face the winds once more, and with our hearts we chart the waters never sailed before. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. I sail in you, you sail